What's up everyone? In this video I'm going to talk about the Nikon D100 and see if it's still good in 2024 and so on. The Nikon D100 was released back in 2002. That makes the Nikon D100 a 22-year-old camera as of July 2024. It's definitely a classic or vintage, but I would definitely put it on the vintage side, especially for a DSLR at this age. But how does it hold up in 2024? In this video, I'm going to see how it performs and see if it's still a relevant camera to use or to get. A little history about the Nikon D100. When it was released, it was a $2,000 camera. In today's money, in 2024, that's a $3,400 camera. That's pretty expensive, I would say, especially for a camera, but this camera was definitely ahead of its game because back then, if anyone remembers, it was all about the megapixel race. Nikon had the D1 series cameras, the D1X and the D1H, and those were, I think, $5,000 back in the day. So just do the calculations on that, and that's how much that camera was back then. And if anyone remembers the megapixel race, leave a comment below too. So let's get to the specs of the D100. It has a 6.1 megapixel CCD crop sensor. The ISO ranges from 200 to 1600 with a boost up to 6400, and that's high 2. High 1 is ISO 3200. It has a 1.8 inch LCD screen. It's pretty small. 5 autofocus points. It also has 1 CF memory card slot. It can shoot up to 3 FPS in RAW and 6 FPS in JPEG. And one of the things I like about the D100 is the image quality. A lot of people will talk about the CCD crop sensors and how great the colors are. I'm going to get back to that soon in this video, so stay tuned. Another great thing I like about this camera too is the small RAW files. I'm used to the Nikon Z6's 24 megapixels RAW files, but the 6.1 megapixel RAW files are amazing to work with. And another great thing I like about this camera is the wide variety of lenses that you can use. Since it is a Nikon F-mount, you can use a wide range of Nikon F-mount lenses. Another great thing that I do like about the D100 too that kind of surprised me was the autofocus. It was actually pretty quick. And there's going to the bad stuff about the Nikon D100. It's not bad, it's just me more nitpicking. And you also have to remember this is a 22-year-old camera. So it does not have built-in Bluetooth, it does not have Wi-Fi, it cannot do video recording. So this Nikon D100, it is a straight up digital SLR camera. Just nitpicking again, when I've been using it, right above ISO 1000, it is pretty grainy. I think 800 is usable depending on how much light you're using and what your settings are. But I would say right past 1000 ISO, it's pretty grainy. But remember, back in 2002, ISO 1000, it was pretty crazy. I think even with today's technology, with Photoshop and the denoising, ISO 800 and ISO 1000 is pretty doable depending on what your settings are and what you're photographing. And another con too is just a tiny LCD screen. It is very tiny compared to what I've been using with the Nikon D40s or even the D700. Or even my Nikon Z6. That 1.8 inch LCD screen is very small. Be prepared that the LCD screen is nothing like the LCD screens of the modern cameras. So a little history, like I said before, when the Nikon D100 was released, Nikon had 2 flagship cameras. There's the D1 series, the D1X, and the D1H. And the D100 was designed for those that couldn't afford the D1 and the D1X. The D1 had 2 megapixels, so the D1H had 6 megapixels. The D100 was rising in popularity, especially with the 6 megapixels compared to the 2 megapixels the flagship cameras had. Just going back to the prices, if remember, this D100 was $2,000 back then, $3,400 in today's money, and the D1 bodies were $5,500. That's about $10,000 back in the early 2000s, which is crazy. So if you did have a chance to play with the D100 or the D1X when they were released, please leave a comment below and share your stories about it, because it's always great to hear stories from other photographers that had the chance to play with it when they were released. And you know, it's a funny thing too, because back in the early 2000s, a 6 megapixel camera was known as a high resolution camera. Now we have crop sensor cameras that have 24 and 33 megapixels, and that was a pretty exciting time back then too, just because it was all about megapixels. A lot of people were talking about like 6 megapixels, 12 megapixels, but nowadays I think with social media, it'd be really hard to tell the difference between a D100's image and a Nikon Z6 image. I think you could definitely tell in terms of photo image quality, but if someone was to look at it real quickly, it'd be pretty hard to tell. So there's a few reasons why I really do like using the Nikon D100. It's the body. One of the first things I immediately noticed about the Nikon D100 was the ISO white balance, and quality modes on the dial. I think most photographers now would look for an ISO button. On the D100, you have to move the dial to ISO, white balance, or quality to make those changes. So let's talk about the image quality. It's actually pretty good. On the LCD screen, it's pretty hard to tell, and I'll get back to that pretty soon in this video. But there's just something about the D100's image quality that gives it a certain characteristics. There's some examples from ISO 200, 250, 320, 400, 500, 640, 800, 1000, 1250, 1600, high 1, and high 2. I did take it out for a test drive just to show you how good it is too, especially when you put a nice lens on it, like right here. What's up everyone? So I have the D100 with the 60mm 2.8 micro lens. 2.8 is a very fun lens. It's one I would recommend if you really want to have fun with your photography. I'm gonna bump it up to f5. This is pretty crazy looking. Sculpture is crazy looking. Let's just go to 3.5 just to see. The quality from the LCD screen isn't too bad. I just can't see there. I'm at 4,000. It is max at 4,000. Sure. LCD is kind of strange too, because if you tilt it like this, I don't know if you can catch it, but look at that. It's strange. Not strange, but it's just the way that LCD is. It's like if you tilt it one way and another, the image brightens up or darkens. Shutter speed at f3.5. Actually, I'm gonna go f4. Cannot see the screen at all. Let's put on some bug spray. D100. Take a look at these flowers here with the macro lens. Whoa. It's really interesting. A lot of people have written some stuff in here. I'm at ISO 200. And from the screen, it looks pretty nice. More of these. This is actually pretty cool. I think it's supposed to look like a moose or something. I'm not even sure where to go. It's my first time at this park. Just a lot of sculptures and art stuff. Let's see, go this way. Bike and a chair up top. Pretty interesting. So I was just right over there. I walked over here, and it was actually pretty neat. This D100 is like, the focus isn't, autofocus isn't too bad, for real. For being such an old camera, I'm actually kind of impressed. But let's take a look at these right here. That's a pretty cool shot. Look at that. Very neat. Let me just go all the way down to like f2.8 just to see the bokeh here. That's why I can see why people really like this 62.8, because this is a very, very fun lens to use. And that. Oh, it's super muddy and it's a lot of bugs. Cool thing about macro lenses again is that you can actually, there's a mosquito around me, it's trying to bite me, but I got my bug spray on. But anyways, with macros you can get pretty close to these. It looks like flowers, but they're just pine cones. It's pretty neat. .320. Actually, I'm gonna go to like f5. See if this helps a little bit. I cannot tell from this screen. Let's come back over here where there's less wind. I really would recommend this lens though, for real. It's a really fun lens with such an old camera. And the quality from it is still really good too. So I'm just going to f2.8 just to show you guys at f2.8 how sharp it is. As I don't know. I cannot tell from the screen until I look at the pictures on a computer screen. Sure, why not? Do this wheat here. I think I can bump it up to like f5 on here. Yeah, focusing isn't bad at all. It's actually pretty quick. And for a D lens too, the focus isn't too bad. What is this? Oh, these are just leaves, right? The metering is kind of strange too. I can't tell if it metering is accurate or not. All right, here. I was at 1/4000 f5 at ISO 320. I mean, from the picture, from the screen, it looks nice. Well, like, the exposure looks good. Just can't tell. This is pretty cool. All right, let's go to f8. I'm gonna go down all the way to 1/800 shutter speed. Exposure looks good on the screen. I'm gonna go a little higher. That looks good, I hope. Switch on over to the 35 1.8G DX lens. That's a f2 1/4000. All right, I'm gonna switch to the 50 1.8 because I'm curious now how the 50 1.8 looks on the D100. Oh yeah, I have the old version and the new one, but I'm gonna use the old one just because, you know, vintage. quote unquote vintage. It's more like a classic lens. This lens you can buy for like under $100 used. I think I bought this one for like 45 bucks. It's not bad. Not bad at all. But with the 50, I think it's at a 75mm focal length. Bump it up to f2, 2.2, 1/4000. Take a picture there and just walk right there. This is actually a really photogenic area for real. I have to do a photo shoot here. If you want me to do a photo shoot, comment below. It's like such a creative spot. So overall, is the Nikon D100 still a capable camera? I would say yes, especially if you can find one that's still in good working condition. I bought one for $20, but it had issues, and now it's just paperweight. This is my second one that I got for $40 locally, and it is in good working order too. The body is actually in pretty good condition compared to the ones I've seen online. When you have it in your hands, it definitely feels like a vintage DSLR. This camera was based off the N80 and the N90 film cameras, so it does feel pretty bulky. And again, it's just crazy to think that this camera is 22 years old as of July 2024. This is a 22-year-old DSLR, and it performs quite good for its age. So would I use it for paid gigs? Probably not, but you definitely can if you know what you're doing. I wouldn't use it for weddings since I already have cameras that are more than capable of capturing those kind of events. But I'm not saying that you can't do it with the D100, but it's one camera that I would not recommend for photographing fast-moving subjects, weddings, or low-light photography. So who is the Nikon D100 for? At this time, I think it's more for those that want to collect the Nikon DSLRs. It has no video recording, it has no in-body presets, it has no built-in Wi-Fi, it can't do video recording, the LCD screen is very tiny, and if you can't find one in good condition, it's going to be very hard to find one that's in good condition. I think right now it's worth collecting, especially if you like collecting your Nikon DSLRs. If you are using third-party batteries, I know that in my experience, I've had bad experiences with third-party batteries, but what do you think? Let me know if you think this camera is a classic or a vintage. I would consider it a vintage just because of the button layout. It's so close to a film camera like the N80 and N90s where you have to switch the ISO, white balance, and quality on the dial. That's the slight learning curve, but once you get used to it, you get the hang of it. It's a very fun camera to use, especially if you want that vintage feel where you can switch to the ISO and back to the manual mode. And one of the things I do like about it is the features too. It has a grid, and the grid is there to help you compose your shots too. Another interesting thing about the Nikon D100 is that it also has the anti-shock or anti-mirror shock mode. So this is with the anti-shock on, anti-shock off, which when you do turn it on, it makes it seem like it's doing a long exposure when it's really not. It actually delays the shutter opening by half a second to stop internal vibrations. I'd recommend having it off, but if you do have it on, just expect it to feel like you're doing a long exposure. This camera is definitely a classic now, or a vintage. I'm definitely not gonna get rid of it. I love the colors from it. I like its unique button layout, and I love that I can use any of my Nikon f-mount lenses on it. So if you have a D100 or you have had one, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your experiences with the D100. Again, I want to say thanks for watching. If you've gotten this far, I really appreciate you all watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, because that really helps my channel out a lot. And again, like I said, if you have any questions about this camera or you're thinking about getting this camera, feel free to leave a comments below. And for those who have owned it, definitely share your experience with it too, because I'd love to hear your stories and your experiences with it. It's really fun to read all your stories. I just want to say thanks again for watching. See ya.